Hello and welcome back to the Nations Prism, your lens into the fascinating tapestry of global cultures. Picture this. You invite a Korean colleague for coffee. They respond with, "I'll consider it." That's actually a polite nitrogen monoxide. But when you invite a French colleague, immediately say "nan" without hesitation. And that's completely normal, not rude at all. Here's the shocking reality. Only 10% of Koreans have ever said a direct "enyo," meaning no, in a workplace setting. While 85% of French people routinely start their refusals with a clear non-concession. If you think Koreans never refuse anything, and French people are brutally blunt to the point of rudeness, you've completely misunderstood the art of saying no in these two sophisticated cultures. Today, we're going to decode the secret behind Korean Nunchi, the superpower of reading between the lines without words, and explore why the French non has been considered a rhetorical art form since the reign of Louis XIV. What you're about to discover will revolutionize how you understand cross-cultural communication. Because these aren't just different ways of refusing. They're entirely different philosophies about human interaction, respect, and social harmony. Let's start with something that will completely blow your mind about the historical origins of these refusal styles. The French approach to saying no didn't emerge from rudeness. It actually evolved from the deadly serious etiquette of Versailles in the 17th century, where refusing incorrectly could literally cost you your head. The word etiquette itself comes from French, referring to the instruction cards that taught courtiers the precise ways to communicate with royalty. Louis XIV's court developed over 50 different ways to say no politely, each calibrated for different social situations. A direct refusal to the king required elaborate linguistic gymnastics. What modern people interpret as French directness is actually the distilled essence of centuries of diplomatic precision. When a French person says "nan" today, they're employing a style refined through hundreds of years of navigating complex social hierarchies. Meanwhile, Korean refusal culture developed from completely different historical pressures rooted in Confucian principles during the Joseon Dynasty. In this system, direct refusal was seen as destroying social harmony, the fundamental principle that held society together. The concept of Nunchi, which has no direct English equivalent, evolved as a sophisticated social radar system that allowed people to communicate refusal without ever saying the actual word no. Here's where it gets fascinating. Korean culture developed over 20 different idioms and indirect phrases specifically designed to avoid direct refusal. While maintaining respect, a Korean person saying "it might be difficult" or "I'll think about it" isn't being evasive. They're employing a communication system that prioritizes collective harmony over individual clarity. The contrast becomes even more striking when you realize a 19th century diplomatic meeting between French and Korean representatives reportedly failed, with 40% of the miscommunication stemming directly from these different approaches. The French delegation interpreted Korean indirectness as deception, while the Korean delegation viewed French directness as aggressive and disrespectful. These historical foundations created communication styles that seem almost designed to confuse each other. Korean culture developed high-context communication, where meaning is conveyed through timing, tone, and silence. French culture, in contrast, developed low-context communication, where meaning is conveyed through precise vocabulary and clear statements. The numbers tell an incredible story. Koreans use indirect communication 25% more frequently than Americans, and the gap with the French is even larger. 70% of Koreans report using Nunchi daily, while only 15% of French people say they rely on similar intuitive social cues. But here's the paradox that reveals how deeply these differences run. 62% of Korean students learning French or English struggle specifically with direct refusal patterns. They understand the grammar and vocabulary perfectly, but they instinctively prefer indirect strategies 80% of the time, even when speaking foreign languages. Their brains are literally wired differently. This creates real-world consequences beyond politeness. International business studies show 35% higher miscommunication rates in Korea, France. Business partnerships specifically due to refusal-style clashes. Korean executives interpret French directness as hostility, while French managers see Korean indirectness as evasiveness or an inability to make decisions. The body language differences make these communication gaps even wider. When a Korean person looks down while speaking hesitantly, they're showing respect and signaling a polite refusal. When a French person maintains direct eye contact while saying "Nan," they're demonstrating sincerity and respect for your time. But each culture reads the other signals completely wrong. The French think Koreans are lying, while Koreans think the French are being aggressive. This extends to timing and silence in ways that create almost comedic misunderstandings. A Korean CEO pausing for 10 seconds before responding is delivering a massive nitrogen monoxide. Through silence, a French manager saying "Nan" with a smile is setting a polite boundary, not expressing hostility. These signals are so culturally specific that even experienced international business people often miss them completely. The hierarchy dynamics in these refusal cultures reveal even deeper philosophical differences about power, respect, and social organization. Korean workplace culture operates on Hofstede's individualism scale at just 18 points, making it one of the most collectivist societies in the world. This means that saying no to a superior isn't just impolite, it's a fundamental violation of social order. A Korean employee cannot directly refuse their boss's request. Instead, they must navigate through at least 10 layers of honorific language, saying things like, "It might be challenging to complete by that timeline," or "Perhaps we should consider alternative approaches." French culture scores 71 on the same individualism scale, creating a completely different power dynamic. Post-revolutionary France developed egalitarian ideals that actually encourage respectful debate with authority figures. A French employee can say "Nan" to their boss, but they'll add formal vous forms and provide logical reasoning. This isn't disrespect. It's considered professional honesty that helps prevent mistakes and inefficiencies. These differences create fascinating workplace psychology patterns. Korean employees often experience something called wabyeon, a culture-specific stress condition caused by suppressing emotions and opinions, particularly around authority figures. The inability to express disagreement directly creates internal psychological pressure that manifests as physical symptoms. Meanwhile, French employees report feeling empowered by their ability to set clear boundaries and express disagreement professionally. The gift refusal ritual perfectly illustrates how these cultural patterns play out in everyday social situations. In Korean culture, you must refuse a gift 2 to 3 times before accepting it. This isn't game playing. It's a sophisticated dance that allows both parties to save face. The giver demonstrates generosity without appearing pushy, while the receiver shows humility without appearing greedy. When a Korean person finally accepts after multiple refusals, both parties have performed their cultural roles correctly. French gift culture operates on completely opposite principles. If someone offers you something, you either accept immediately with gratitude or decline clearly with a brief explanation. Repeated offers and refusals are seen as inefficient and potentially manipulative. French people value authentic response over ritualized politeness. This creates predictable cross-cultural disasters. When a Western person, including French visitors, offers a gift to a Korean colleague and receives 3 polite refusals, they often walk away thinking their offer was genuinely unwanted. Meanwhile, the Korean person expected the gift giver to persist, interpreting the withdrawal as evidence that the gift wasn't sincerely offered. Conversely, when a Korean person offers a gift to a French colleague who immediately accepts, the Korean might privately think their colleague is greedy or lacking in social grace. The psychology behind these patterns reveals 2 completely different prioritization systems. Korean culture prioritizes other face, meaning protecting other people from embarrassment or social discomfort, even at personal cost. French culture balances self-face, protecting individual, autonomy, and authenticity, while maintaining social politeness. Neither approach is superior, but they're optimized for different social outcomes. Business negotiations showcase these differences most dramatically, often with expensive consequences. When a Korean business partner says, "We'll consider your proposal," Western negotiators typically hear genuine consideration and wait for a response. In reality, this phrase indicates 99% probability of refusal. It's delivered in a face-saving manner that allows future relationship preservation. Korean negotiators have spent months politely indicating no, while their Western counterparts remained optimistic about deal closure. French business communication operates on different principles entirely. When a French negotiator says "cest," They mean the situation is actually complicated and requires problem solving, not that they're delivering a polite refusal. French directness in business is designed to save time and prevent misunderstandings. But Korean partners often interpret immediate non-responses as evidence that negotiations haven't really begun yet. These miscommunications cost real money and time. Western companies report losing an average of 3 months misreading Korean indirect refusals. While Korean companies express shock at French instant rejections, the business world has started responding with cultural training programs that reduce miscommunication by 60%. And bilingual cultural mediators have become hot career options in Seoul-Paris trade relationships. Success stories like the Samsung-Lore partnership demonstrate what's possible when both sides learn to decode each other's refusal styles. Samsung executives learn to ask French partners direct questions and expect direct answers, while Lore managers learn to read Korean hesitation patterns and provide face-saving alternatives for declined proposals. The partnership thrives specifically because both companies invested in understanding these communication differences. The dating world provides perhaps the most emotionally charged examples of these cultural clashes. Korean dating culture employs massive layers of indirection, or maybe next time genuinely means never. French dating culture values clarity even in romantic contexts, where non pas à soir literally means not tonight, rather than a permanent rejection. Gender dynamics add additional complexity layers. Korean women typically use even more indirect refusal strategies than Korean men, influenced by both safety considerations and traditional face-saving expectations. French women demonstrate equally direct communication patterns as French men, reflecting feminist cultural influences that prioritize clear consent and authentic expression over traditional politeness patterns. Dating apps have started adapting to these cultural differences in fascinating ways. Korean apps now include soft rejection features that help users decline dates without explicit refusal language, while French apps emphasize clear communication badges that help users identify partners who value directness. Cross-cultural couples provide fascinating laboratories for observing how these refusal styles impact intimate relationships. 40% of Korean-French couples cite refusal style differences as their initial major challenge. But here's the surprising twist. 75% report that navigating these differences actually improved their overall communication skills long-term. They became more attuned to nonverbal cues, more patient with misunderstandings, and more skilled at checking assumptions before reacting. One Korean-French couple in Paris described their early relationship disasters. She would say, "I'm not sure about that restaurant," meaning absolutely not, while he heard genuine uncertainty and spent 20 minutes trying to convince her. Meanwhile, when he said none, "I don't want to see that movie," she interpreted it as relationship, threatening rejection, rather than simple preference expression. Learning to decode each other's communication styles became their relationship superpower, making them more effective communicators than many same-culture couples. The generational shifts happening within both cultures reveal how globalization is reshaping these traditional patterns. Young Koreans in Seoul, particularly those in their 20s and 30s, are becoming measurably more direct in their communication styles. Exposure to Western media, international education, and global business practices is creating what sociologists call hybrid communication styles. These young Koreans can code switch between traditional Nunchi-based indirection with older Koreans and more direct communication with international contacts. Similarly, young French people in Paris and other international cities are learning softer refusal techniques specifically for interacting with Asian business partners and friends. French cultural adaptation doesn't mean abandoning directness, but rather developing cultural intelligence about when and how to employ different communication strategies. Depending on the audience, technology is accelerating these cultural adaptations in unexpected ways. Korean social media platforms have developed sophisticated features for indirect communication, including read receipt delays that allow users to signal availability without explicit response, and emoji systems that convey graduated levels of interest or refusal. French social platforms emphasize immediate response features and clear status indicators that help users communicate availability and boundaries efficiently. The business world is developing even more sophisticated solutions to bridge these communication gaps. International companies now employ cultural liaison specialists who can translate not just language, but communication styles between Korean and French teams. These specialists don't just interpret words, they decode the cultural context behind hesitations, silences, and indirect responses, then translate them into communication styles that the other culture can understand accurately. Samsung's European operations, for example, now train their Korean executives in what they call cultural code switching, teaching them to recognize when French partners need direct answers and when Korean partners need face-saving alternatives. French companies like L'Or have developed Nunchi training programs that help their managers recognize Korean indirect communication patterns and respond appropriately without forcing uncomfortable directness. The psychological research behind these communication differences reveals fascinating insights about how culture shapes brain processing. Korean speakers show different neural activation patterns when processing refusal scenarios compared to French speakers. Korean brains demonstrate heightened activity in regions associated with social monitoring and emotional regulation during refusal situations, while French brains show increased activation in areas linked to logical processing and verbal formulation. This isn't just cultural preference. It's literally different neural wiring developed through decades of cultural practice. Korean children learn to monitor social cues and emotional atmospheres from early childhood, developing what neuroscientists call enhanced social cognition networks. French children learn to articulate thoughts clearly and defend positions logically, developing enhanced verbal processing networks. These neural differences explain why cultural communication training takes time and practice to be effective. You're not just learning new social rules, you're literally rewiring habitual brain responses that have been reinforced for decades. Successful cross-cultural communicators develop what researchers call cultural cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different neural processing patterns depending on the cultural context. The implications extend far beyond Korean-French interactions. As global business and social connections increase, understanding these fundamental communication differences becomes crucial for anyone working internationally. The Korean-French comparison provides a perfect case study because it represents two extremes of the indirect-direct communication spectrum, making the differences more visible and easier to analyze. Modern diplomatic training now includes specific modules on cultural refusal styles, particularly for negotiations involving Asian and European partners.
Yes.
Diplomats learn to recognize when we'll study this proposal carefully. Means no versus when that's impossible, means let's find alternatives. These skills have measurably improved international negotiation success rates and reduced the time required to reach agreements. The cultural exchange is creating entirely new communication hybrid forms. Korean companies operating in France are developing polite directness strategies that combine French clarity with Korean face-saving techniques. French companies in Korea are learning respectful indirection that maintains French honesty while employing Korean harmony preservation methods. Perhaps most remarkably, these cultural adaptations are spreading beyond just Korean-French interactions. Other cultures are adopting elements of both communication styles as global best practices. American companies are incorporating Nunchi-style social awareness training to improve team dynamics, while Japanese companies are adding French-style direct feedback methods to accelerate decision-making processes. The restaurant and hospitality industries provide perfect examples of this cultural fusion in action. Korean restaurants in Paris now train servers to recognize when French customers want direct recommendations versus when they prefer gentle guidance. French restaurants in Seoul learn to provide multiple options and indirect suggestions rather than immediately accepting or rejecting customer requests. These adaptations reveal something profound about human communication flexibility. Neither the Korean indirect style nor the French direct style is inherently superior. They're each optimized for different social priorities and environmental conditions. Korean indirection optimizes for group harmony and relationship preservation in hierarchical societies. French directness optimizes for individual autonomy and efficient problem-solving in egalitarian societies. The future of cross-cultural communication seems to be heading toward what researchers call adaptive communication competence, where individuals can recognize cultural contexts and adjust their communication styles accordingly. This isn't about abandoning your cultural identity. It's about developing the flexibility to communicate effectively across different cultural frameworks, while maintaining your authentic personality and values. The educational implications of these refusal cultures extend into surprising areas that affect how people learn and develop professionally. Korean students studying abroad often struggle not with academic content, but with classroom participation expectations that require direct disagreement. A Korean student might understand a lecture perfectly, but remain silent rather than ask clarifying questions that could imply the professor's explanation was unclear. This isn't lack of engagement. It's cultural programming that prioritizes group harmony over individual clarity seeking. French students face opposite challenges when studying in Korea or other high-context cultures. Their trained habit of asking direct questions and challenging assumptions can be interpreted as disrespectful or aggressive. French exchange students in Korean universities often receive feedback about being too confrontational, when they're simply employing the critical thinking skills that French education specifically develops. These educational culture clashes have led to innovative solutions in international programs. Universities now employ cultural learning facilitators, who help students understand that academic success requires adapting communication styles to cultural contexts. Korean students learn that Western professors interpret silence as lack of understanding, while Western students learn that Asian educational environments value careful consideration. The mental health implications of these communication differences deserve serious attention, because they affect millions of people navigating cross-cultural environments daily. Korean expatriates in France often experience what psychologists call cultural communication fatigue, from constantly translating their thoughts into more direct formats. The cognitive load of suppressing Nunchi-based intuition, while forcing explicit verbal communication creates measurable stress responses. French expatriates in Korea face different psychological challenges. Their natural inclination toward direct communication must be constantly monitored and filtered, creating what researchers term authenticity strain. French people report feeling fake or dishonest when required to use indirect refusal methods, even when they intellectually understand the cultural appropriateness. Successful long-term expatriates from both cultures develop sophisticated coping strategies that preserve cultural identity while enabling effective cross-cultural function. Korean professionals in France learn to create directness, practice opportunities in low-stakes situations, gradually building comfort with explicit communication. French professionals in Korea develop indirection appreciation skills, learning to find beauty and sophistication in subtle communication. The corporate world has started recognizing these psychological AIS costs and investing in support systems that go beyond simple cultural training. Companies now provide cultural communication coaching that helps employees maintain psychological well-being while adapting to different communication norms. This isn't just sensitivity training. It's practical mental health support for the cognitive demands of cultural code switching. Customer service industries showcase these communication differences in fascinating ways because they involve high-stakes interactions where misunderstanding can immediately damage business relationships. Korean customer service operates on principles of preemptive problem-solving, where representatives try to anticipate customer needs and address issues before explicit complaints. This creates incredibly attentive service that can seem almost psychic to visitors from more direct cultures. French customer service prioritizes efficient problem resolution, where representatives respond directly to stated problems and requests without attempting to read unstated needs. This creates service that feels respectful of customer autonomy, but can seem cold or unhelpful to people from cultures that expect intuitive service anticipation. International luxury brands operating in both markets have developed dual training systems that teach service representatives to recognize cultural communication cues and adapt their approach accordingly. A Korean customer's hesitation signals need for gentle guidance, while a French customer's direct question signals need for specific information. The digital communication revolution has created entirely new contexts for these cultural differences to manifest. Korean digital culture has developed sophisticated emoji and reaction systems that allow for nuanced, indirect communication in text-based formats. Multiple levels of like reactions, timing-based response strategies, and subtle profile status indicators create digital Nunchi opportunities. French digital culture emphasizes clear written communication that translates direct speaking patterns into text format. French people tend to write longer, more explicit messages that leave less room for misinterpretation, even in casual social media contexts. Social media platforms are beginning to recognize these cultural communication preferences and developing features that accommodate different styles. Some platforms now offer cultural communication mode settings that adjust interface elements to support either direct or indirect communication preferences. The influence of these refusal cultures extends into unexpected areas like conflict resolution and mediation. Korean approach to conflict emphasizes restoring harmony through indirect negotiation that allows all parties to save face and maintain relationships. Traditional Korean mediation involves multiple intermediary conversations and solutions that avoid explicit admission of fault by any party. French conflict resolution prioritizes clarifying positions through direct discussion that identifies specific problems and develops logical solutions. French mediation involves face-to-face discussion, explicit statement of grievances, and solutions that address root causes even if they require acknowledgement of mistakes. International mediation services now specifically train mediators in both approaches, because many cross-cultural conflicts stem not from genuine disagreement, but from fundamental misunderstanding about appropriate communication processes. A Korean party might interpret French directness as attack, while a French party might interpret Korean indirection as avoidance or dishonesty. These cultural patterns are even influencing artificial intelligence development and human-computer interaction design. AI systems designed for Korean markets incorporate uncertainty acknowledgement, multiple option presentation, and gentle suggestion patterns that align with Nunchi-based communication expectations. AI for French markets emphasizes direct information delivery, clear yes-no responses, and efficient task completion that matches French communication preferences. The research implications continue expanding as scholars recognize that understanding these communication differences provides insights into fundamental questions about human social cognition. Korean and French refusal cultures represent two successful but completely different solutions to the universal human challenge of maintaining social cooperation while preserving individual autonomy. What makes these communication differences particularly fascinating is how they're creating entirely new forms of cultural innovation as Korean and French communities interact more frequently in our globalized world. Neither culture is simply adopting the other's patterns. Instead, they're creating hybrid communication forms that combine the strengths of both approaches, while minimizing their respective weaknesses. In multinational corporations with significant Korean and French operations, we're seeing the emergence of what communication specialists call tactical directness. This involves Korean professionals learning to deliver clear information when specifically requested, while maintaining their natural sensitivity to timing and social context. French professionals are developing strategic softness, where they maintain their commitment to honest communication while learning to package difficult messages in ways that preserve relationships and allow face-saving exits. These hybrid approaches are proving remarkably effective because they combine Korean emotional intelligence with French logical clarity. Teams that successfully integrate both communication styles report higher satisfaction rates, faster problem resolution, and stronger working relationships than teams that operate with single cultural communication patterns. The generational impact of these cultural exchanges is creating long-term changes that will reshape both cultures over time. Korean millennials and Gen Z individuals who grow up with global media exposure and international education are developing what researchers call bicultural communication competence. They can seamlessly switch between traditional Nunchi-based indirection with family and elders, and more direct communication patterns with international peers and colleagues. French young people are developing complementary skills, learning to read nonverbal cues and appreciate subtle communication that their parents' generation might dismiss as inefficient. This isn't abandoning French directness. It's expanding their communication toolkit to include appreciation for different forms of social intelligence. The influence extends beyond just Korean-French interactions into broader global communication trends. International organizations are adopting Korean-inspired consensus-building methods that emphasize patience and indirect negotiation for complex multicultural teams. Simultaneously, they're implementing French-inspired clarity protocols that ensure important information doesn't get lost in diplomatic language when urgent decisions are required. Technology companies are at the forefront of this cultural integration because their products must work effectively across all cultural communication patterns. User interface design now considers whether features should provide direct feedback or subtle suggestions, whether error messages should be explicit or gentle, and whether social features should enable direct or indirect interaction patterns. The dating app industry provides particularly interesting examples of this cultural adaptation. Apps operating in both Korean and French markets have developed sophisticated matching algorithms that consider communication style compatibility, alongside traditional factors like interests and values. Users can indicate preferences for direct or indirect communication, allowing the platform to suggest matches with compatible interaction styles. These technological adaptations reveal something profound about how cultural communication differences will evolve in digital native generations. Rather than forcing global standardization toward one communication style, technology is enabling greater diversity by making it easier for people to find others who share their preferred interaction patterns. The business implications continue expanding as companies recognize that communication style diversity can be a competitive advantage rather than merely a challenge to manage. Teams that include both direct and indirect communicators often develop more thorough decision-making processes because they naturally incorporate both rapid problem-solving and careful relationship consideration. International consulting firms now specifically recruit for communication style diversity, recognizing that Korean professionals bring in valuable social sensing abilities that can prevent cultural missteps. French professionals contribute clarity and efficiency that accelerates project timelines. The most successful international teams balance these approaches strategically. The personal development industry has begun incorporating lessons from both refusal cultures into general communication training. Programs now teach Korean-inspired social radar skills alongside French-inspired authentic expression techniques, helping individuals become more effective communicators. Perhaps most remarkably, these cultural exchanges are revealing universal human communication needs that transcend specific cultural patterns. Everyone needs both clarity and harmony, both efficiency and relationship preservation, both individual authenticity and social connection. Korean and French refusal cultures represent different strategies for balancing these universal needs, and their interaction is teaching us new ways to achieve better balance. The healthcare industry has started applying these insights to improve patient communication across cultural boundaries. Medical professionals learn to recognize when patients from indirect communication cultures need gentle questioning to reveal symptoms or concerns. They also learn to provide clear information to patients from direct communication cultures who prefer explicit medical explanations. Legal systems are adapting similar approaches, particularly in international arbitration and cross-cultural dispute resolution. Understanding that refusal patterns reflect different concepts of respect and cooperation helps legal professionals develop more effective strategies for international cases. The educational research emerging from these cultural studies is reshaping how we understand learning and cognitive development. Children who grow up bicultural, exposed to both indirect and direct communication patterns, demonstrate enhanced social cognition, improved emotional regulation, and greater cognitive flexibility. This suggests that exposure to diverse communication cultures benefits human development in measurable ways, providing yet another argument for maintaining and celebrating cultural diversity. The future trajectory seems clear. Rather than one communication style dominating globally, we're heading toward a world where cultural communication competence becomes a valuable skill set. Understanding Nunchi and appreciating the art of French directness aren't just interesting cultural knowledge. They're practical tools for navigating an increasingly interconnected world. Through the lens of saying no, we've discovered two masterpieces of human communication: Korean Nunchi, where silence speaks louder than words, and French l'art de dire non, where clarity is the ultimate courtesy. Both are sophisticated systems, just operating on different wavelengths. Each optimized for different social priorities, but equally valid and valuable in their respective contexts. That's all for today on the Nations Prism. What surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another cultural deep dive. Share this video with a friend who needs to see this. Till next time, keep exploring.